What is going on, party people? Captain Zeus here, and I am followed by the man himself, Lucky, over here on a Nerds and Squares Small Talk mini podcast episode. Now, this one's going to be over a topic a lot of people have been wanting to discuss and probably have been discussing for quite some time. It is over the Batman Part 2, directed by Matt Reeves. Now, there's a lot of things that we want to cover here, but the first main thing is the delays. Holy crap, there has been so many delays. Roughly 3, if I recall correctly. Supposed to come out this year. I'm surprised it hasn't been delayed even further. I'll be completely honest with you. Like, I don't know what it was about the script that was causing delays, because you would think that this was something, considering how much Matt Reeves has planned out for his crime saga, you would think that this was, one, a top priority, which I'm sure it was, and 2, something that was done mostly already until this point. I mean, I'm glad that we're getting the movie, period, but I mean, come on, what were we rewriting? What wasn't good about it? You know, I kind of want to know what the first couple of drafts were like before you submitted it into James Gunn. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous the amount of delays movies have been having recently, although I guess on the flip side, better to get a good movie with some delays than a bad movie with none. So, I don't know. Lucky, what do you think?
It's bittersweet to me, Zeus. Number one, anytime Matt Reeves is directing a film, especially something with the Batman, I have full trust that it is going to be another absolute banger, and we're in for a special treat. That's first things first. I think the first movie was very telling of how this is going to go. I trust Robert Pattinson as the Batman. I think Matt Reeves directing the ship, you can't have anybody better. In terms of my frustration, it really felt for a while very nerve-wracking on if we're even going to get a Batman Part 2. Because, to your point, Zeus, we've seen this before, especially recently with Blade and the way that they did Muhammad Ali. Like, it's so frustrating to watch such talent and an idea where you're like, oh my God, this is going to be incredible. And it just continues to get pushed and pushed. And at some point, I felt like if they would have pushed it back anymore, it would have just fallen off the wagon a little bit in terms of, I love the Batman. I think it's great. My hype is undying for any Batman content that we can possibly get. But not every fan is like me. And there's only so long you can ride on the coattails of a previous successful project. And you have to come out with something new, especially when you're promising this is going to be a crime saga. It's going to be big. You have to continue to put stuff out for that, or the hype is going to die down and people aren't going to take it seriously. So I'm happy that we're finally getting it. I do think that the love and the hype is still there, especially since the Penguin was so well received. I think that also did a lot for Matt Reeves and company in terms of this crime saga, maintaining its momentum. And I'm very happy that we're finally going to be able to see him again. But it begs the question of why, Zeus? Why was this delayed so much? You know, there's a part of me that I've heard people say that it has to do with conversations with James Gunn. Now, am I on that ship? I don't think so, you know. But when we're talking about Matt Reeves and Batman, and we hear people like Peter Safran say stuff like, there's not going to be 2 Batman. Well, where does that leave the crime saga? And where does that leave our DCU Batman that we're going to get with Brave and the Bold? How do these things interconnect? It's obviously something that is being discussed, but what exactly was the script so put off, especially to your point, Zeus, when he had all this already laid out? Like, he had an idea, a game plan. If you talk to Matt Reeves in 2022 after the release of the Batman, he was literally like, I have all this, like, you know what I mean, prepared, right? So what is going on behind the scenes at DC where they're like, let's take a deeper look at this and let's rewrite some stuff and let's figure it out? I heard someone say on X that potentially Matt Reeves has made 2 scripts. One for his crime saga and everything just stays the way it is. And the other one is for if James Gunn decides to use Robert Pattinson as the DCU Batman and just gets rid of Andy Muschietti and says, Matt Reeves, we want you a part of this. And I have seen an interview where Matt Reeves has said that he is okay with directing and having his Batman in as long as it does not impact his crime saga, what he's doing with Patterson. I don't know how that works in the film. I obviously that's something. I don't believe it's far-fetched to say that there is real conversations of a lot of people have really loved Robert Pattinson's Batman now, and they've said, look, dude, it's not far-fetched. You have a Gotham. You have a Penguin. Let's see if this contrast makes sense, right? We don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other. But I found that tweet very interesting that maybe he made two different scripts in case of those changes, where he might, I don't know. I trust Matt Reeves more than some directors. And I'll talk about it more later.
You have my curiosity of flowing. Them brain juices aren't pumping. Because I would say now that you've brought that up, because I didn't even know that was a conversation being thrown around. That means that these delays are a good thing. Which, I mean, yes, obviously delays are good. That means something was wrong. They're fixing it. But in this scenario, that means there is a deeper meaning to it. It's not that there was something wrong. It's that something went very right and they don't know if that's the door they want to open just yet. And like you said, this is something James Gunn has said from the conception of his DCU, that it is up to Matt Reeves if he wants to join his DCU. And I'll be honest, a lot of people want Pattinson's Batman in there. And I think a great way for them to do it while also casting a new Batman would be as follows. The Crime Saga is still his year 2, right? You still build this Robert Pattinson Crime Saga essentially up, but then you go to the Brave and the Bold, which is the Batman that James Gunn is trying to have for the DCU. And that is a 40-year-old man with already Damian Wayne as a kid. What you do is the Crime Saga is the prequel. It is the prequel to the Brave and the Bold. And that way you can cast a different actor who is older. It still follows the same tone because you can have Matt Reeves in there to either write and or direct. And you can do both. You can have best of both worlds. And I think that would be fantastic because you get all these, there's so many ideas you could do with that, especially with the Arkham Asylum series Matt Reeves was trying to do for his Crime Saga that ended up going to the DCU. That's now kind of not happening, but maybe it could come back if he comes back. I don't know. Lucky, you got something to say. I see it.
Here's my thing. I'm going to go big brain here for a second, okay?
Get it big.
One of the defining traits of Batman is childhood trauma. It is the loss of his parents. And somewhere, especially with Robert Pattinson's Batman, you could see in the way that he looked at the kid at the funeral, in the way that his eye acting, like the visual that he was doing with his eye was phenomenal in Robert Pattinson's The Batman. Hear me out. Like you said, the Crime Saga is the prequel, right, Zeus? One of his biggest things is trying to heal that childhood trauma. Robert Pattinson has been one of the best Batmans in terms of showing that trauma manifest physically. Christian Bale's Batman was phenomenal. But Robert Pattinson's does this thing where you can tell he's haunted and he's depressed and he's struggling. What if you can do that Damian Wayne story and have Robert Pattinson's Batman on the healing journey of his own childhood trauma, especially with Pattinson's, because the way that they portrayed his father, Thomas Wayne, in Pattinson's movie was he was a failure of a father. And he found out in that movie that his dad hurt a lot of kids, including the Riddler at that point. Imagine if his big storyline is healing his trauma by being a better father to Damian.
Ooh.
Than Thomas was to him. I mean, we're cooking a little bit, bro. We're cooking. I know it's big, but we're cooking a little bit.
Quick thing. Family. I would say that is one of the better routes to go with, because how many movies, not just comic book movies, but as a whole, how many in recent memory are a positive father, not just father figure, an actual father trying to have a positive relationship with his kid, trying to heal past trauma, like an actual positive story about a dad and his family. And then that also goes into his adoptive sons with Dick Grayson, with Tim, with the trauma of Jason. Jason's gone at this point, you know? I would love that to go down because of all the points you mentioned. I'm not even going to recap. As someone who thinks so much about men's mental health, you know, it doesn't just hit the normal people, it hits the regular heroes. And we've seen it time and time again. The highest, the mighty, they also could fall. And I think that would be such a good story to tell and something that would be so impactful to the modern audience, especially in this day and age. So I think you were on the right track. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was like, dog, that is just, ooh, that's beautiful.
I mean, think about someone as strong as Batman. And you think about Pattinson's Batman in particular, and all I can think about is like, he can't fully heal until he is able to prove him. And Damian is not an easy child. Comic-wise, he is not an easy child. Pattinson's Batman, we finally get to see him in a DCU role where he smiles. He is trying to take care of his son, but since his trauma isn't healed, there are scenes in which he fails. He might beat the bad guy up. He might throw the guy in Arkham Asylum. But then he comes home and he fails as a father. And this 2-hour and 20-minute movie is all about him trying to figure out what kind of father does Damian need and how can he be that for him? How can he be a hero not only to Gotham, but to his son? You know what I mean? And how does that coincide? I just, listen, dude.
Hey, you're cooking.
Listen.
You're cooking.
I mean, Matt Reeves at the helm, we're talking about something magical. Well, that's what it is.
Like, you know what? On the topic of stuff we would want to see, obviously that's going in the route of the DC universe, right? But let's get back on track with what we know. As of this moment, the Batman Part 2, the Batman Crime Saga, is not a part of the DCU. It is a part of the Elseworld, so it's its own universe. And since the script has been submitted and it looks good, I mean, you could talk more about it, but what kind of stuff would you want to see in the Batman Part 2? Who would you want to be the antagonist? Let me hear it from you first, man, because I got ideas.
Scarecrow.
Ooh.
I think with Robert Pattinson's Batman and what we know about Gotham and how dark it is and how Riddler was a serial killer. He was the Zodiac killer in that film. He had a cult-like following. I would love to see how he interprets Scarecrow because with the fear toxin, the fact that he's a doctor, I feel like the mental aspect that made the Batman, the first Batman, so interesting, you could level it up with that second film with a character like Scarecrow where it's not physical, much like Riddler, but it's even more demanding mentally because of what he can do with the fear toxin. And it can also introduce things to Robert Pattinson's character, such as we've seen in comics how Batman is able to utilize that fear toxin for himself, right? Well, criminals see him as something else. Much like the introduction into the Batman, where we see him talk about how he can't be everywhere at once and the signal is a warning. We already have that established that he's someone to fear in Gotham City. Scarecrow would be that match in terms of our hero, where we would have to dig deeper into how does his parents and his upbringing affect him emotionally and mentally, talking about men's mental health again. We would really get a deeper dive into Bruce Wayne with that than we did in the first movie, where it was a lot of Batman. It was a lot, and don't get me wrong, I love Batman on screen, but I would love to see Bruce Wayne and really get that side of Robert Pattinson's character and get into the nitty gritty of what makes him tick. I think Scarecrow would be the perfect villain for that universe.
So I like the idea that you have. My thing is, I don't think it's going to happen because that is a villain we've seen recently. We hadn't seen the Riddler since Jim Carrey, besides the Gotham show. I don't think Matt Reeves is going to do a villain that is like super well known. Like, I don't think he's going to be doing Bane. I don't think he's going to be doing Solomon Grundy either. But I do think that is one that we could see cameoed, and I'd be cool with that. Because if I recall correctly, the next movie takes place during Christmas, like right after the first movie.
Oh, yeah.
So the popular topic, the popular villain everyone thinks is going to be the antagonist, which I also agree with, is Mr. Freeze. I think Mr. Freeze will be the main antagonist. It's Christmas time. I mean, you could bring in the Penguin in there. It's a little throwback to Batman Returns with Tim Burton, you know what I'm saying? And I think a hidden antagonist, like the secondary one, much like how Riddler was the main and Maroni was the secondary, I think the secondary antagonist will be either the Court of Owls or Ra's al Ghul, because you can do those in two different ways. Well, first of all, you can do them in any way you want, but you can make them grounded and real, just like the Crime Saga is. The Ra's al Ghul route we've only seen once before on the big screen, and you could really make that good. And that could also bring up, you guessed it, a potential Damian Wayne storyline later on down the line. Now, with the Court of Owls, you can make that even deeper, because that could be something about him reclaiming his seat on the throne, if you will. Him retaking his company, and the Court of Owls have either infiltrated or competing against him. And he's basically butting heads and going against them without realizing it's the Court of Owls. And then, obviously, and the climax of the Crime Saga, they would be the Part 3 main antagonists. We could see like Talon in there with a couple of other rogues as minor antagonists, but in the main one in Part 3 would be the Court of Owls in that scenario. But I think those are the routes that we're going to be going for. I think Mr. Freeze will be the biggest bad, and then secondary, we could see some Ra's al Ghul training. Azrael could pop up in there. That would be cool if we went the Ra's al Ghul route.
Hush would be a unique.
I think Hush would have to be that would have to be like a Part 3, but I don't think they're gonna do Hush, because with Hush,
you could do an end credit scene if they are doing Hush part. Yeah, but
Hush would be cool. I just don't think they would, because the storyline relies on how established he is, because he's already friends with Superman. His relationship with Catwoman at that point, because they're wanting to get married until they don't. Whatever. Their rogues gallery is built. Joker's a main plot point in that, which they could still go with. But I just don't think they would do Hush cameos. Again, it's another story. They can mention the doctor popping around at the hospital, for example. But anyways, that's what my antagonist plot points are looking like. Court of Owls with, actually, if I had to throw in someone alternate than Mr. Freeze, right? Because we have two secondary antagonists. Another major antagonist that could be good. Oh my gosh, hold on, let me think. Probably not Killer Croc.
Ivy.
Poison Ivy, I think, no. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I don't think would happen. You could go Two-Face.
Oh,
imagine Mr. Freeze, Ra's al Ghul combo for primary secondary antagonists, and then Two-Face Court of Owls combo with the other antagonist combo. I think that'd be pretty cool, because
that would be cool.
That would be bringing in the morality of justice, which is something that he's kind of already thinking about with how brutal he was in the first movie and how he's being portrayed as more of a hero by the end of it. So the second movie, if we went the Two-Face route, could be his definition of justice. What does that mean? What does that look like? And that could also correlate into the business side of things. I think those are some good routes. I mean, I'm just spitballing.
With Two-Face and the Court of Owls, you're talking about some political intrigue, and you're talking about much how the first movie did get a little bit into politics and how the city was running, and that would be massive. That would be absolutely massive.
Right? Hey, you spit some fire, I spit some fire. That's how it goes, man. That's how it goes.
There we go, man.
Oh.
I'm excited. Now that got me jazzed.
Especially because the holiday themed Part 3, you could do an interpretation of The Long Halloween, and that would be cool. We saw the animated series, or not the animated series, but the Tomorrowverse do the Long Halloween Part 1 and 2 in animated form. I think that would be really cool to see the Calendar Man pop up for a Long Halloween movie.
And it fits. He fits in the Crime Saga, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think he would fit, especially because he's more masterminding, I mean, heck, you could do, instead of, here's a third Part 2 combination, Calendar Man and Two-Face, kind of like what they did with the animated Long Halloween movie. Ooh, make it more of a Two-Face movie instead of a Batman movie. It's not bad. It's not bad whatsoever.
That's not bad.
We're talking about all these different universes of Batman, right? We've talked about the Tomorrowverse. There's the animated movies with, Son of Batman Batman, which great. By the way, watch Son of Batman. If on the topic earlier of The Brave and the Bold, if you want to see Damian Wayne on like how he would look animated or whatever, that's a perfect movie for it. We're talking about the Batman crime saga. But I mean, to end it all off, we mentioned this earlier in the mini podcast episode, kind of making it full circle here, the DCU Batman movie. If this movie looks good and Matt Reeves could come in and take over, what does that mean for the current director, Andy Muschietti? I mean, we know he directed the Flash movie, and I'll be honest, I couldn't stand the Flash movie, man. My brothers love that movie. They freaking love it. I'm like, dude, Blue Beetle was way better than that, and they think Blue Beetle sucks. I'm like, you guys are absolutely crazy. Like, you guys must have been smoking something. The Flash, so many things wrong with it. Granted, this could have also been because of DC interference, you know, with The Rock also messing things up, and then the fact that James Gunn was taking over, and the Ezra Miller stuff. Like, there could have been a lot of things that could have happened to a potentially good story that got ruined, but what we saw wasn't good. And I don't know about you, Lucky, but I don't trust this man with a Batman movie.
No, I think Batman is too crucial of a character. When we talk about having a director who has underperformed in the past, I would think Andy Muschietti would be tied to a smaller character or maybe a show. But when it comes to Batman and what that means as an integral part of the DCU, he has to work. That's why James Gunn took on Superman. You know, that's why he's entrusting a very strong director with the Supergirl movie in 2026. These beginning stages of building this DCU out, you have to have proven commodities in these roles, or at least people that you know understands what they're getting into. And I think with Andy Muschietti, I don't trust him enough for a character that in a story that seems to be a very complex son and father story, and it's Batman and it's Gotham and he now is a part of this universe with David Cornsweat's Superman, and there's a lot that rides on Batman's success, and I just don't believe in Muschietti the way that I would feel comfortable enough and feel like it's gonna be okay and it's going to work out. Obviously, the movie could also be bad and Batman does well and he works in the, you know, Justice League. I don't want that, especially in the early stages. I don't like that idea. I want a strong Batman movie, a strong Superman movie, strong Supergirl, and just be able to carry that into the team ups and the Justice League at some point and be able to really ride that high and flush out this universe the way it should be. I don't want a bunch of solid films and then one of your main characters' movies were complete trash. I don't want to look back on this and say Matt Reeves was perfect for it when Matt Reeves is right there. That's my biggest thing. It's like, I just don't want to settle for Muschietti when you have someone who understands this universe on such a level that you're like, yeah, Matt Reeves. I haven't seen a bad film from you, partner. You know what I mean? Like, the Batman stunned me. No hate to Muschietti as a person, but a character of this importance, when DC is at such an infant phase, we have to succeed here. There is no, as much as, like you said, Zeus, stuff could have gone wrong with the Flash movie, we cannot afford anything going awry with Batman. And it's a director's job, as much as it sucks, it's a director's job to hold his cast accountable and to make sure that the story that is being told is solid. At the end of the day, it always falls on the director. I don't trust Muschietti enough to get it right with what I've seen from him.
All right, well, I mean, you make good points. You made some good points there. I mean, there's a similar issue, if you will, and I'm not going to talk about Marvel too much, but kind of what happened with Marvel. For example, John Watts originally signed on to do the Fantastic Four movie, did the Spider-Man trilogy over there. I personally thought the Spider-Man trilogy for the MCU was poor at best. A lot of good potential, especially with the antagonist. The CG and the execution was bad. Granted, this was another scenario where a lot of Sony intervention could have made a good script or a good movie that started off good, bad. And then John Watts was signed on to do Fantastic Four because Kevin Feige's like, I trust this man. He's going to do great. John Watts did eventually leave the project, and Matt Shankman, the guy that did WandaVision, took over. But it begs the question of, what did James Gunn see in The Flash that made him have so much trust in Andy Muschietti? Because as we've seen in recent interviews since Superman's successful debut in the DCU, he said several times in different ways that the big focus points so far are Batman and Wonder Woman, and they are fast tracking to get those movies, those solo movies, out as best as they can. The Batman has been one of the projects that they announced way in the infancy of the DC universe, and The Brave and the Bold is a script that is being worked on as we speak. So with a character, much like you mentioned, that has such an importance not only in the DC universe or will, but in DC as a whole, as he is probably the biggest moneymaker and has had the largest track record of successful franchises and movies, why is Andy in charge of directing? Granted, I don't think he's writing the script. I think they have someone else writing the script, which could be good or bad. But considering James Gunn's trust, he did well with Superman. You know, he was like, if anyone's going to do it right, it might as well be me. He's had a great track record with movies on his own. What is it that he saw in Andy? What is it that could have went right in The Flash that didn't get executed? These are questions that I'm throwing in my head as to what makes him trust Andy so much. Now, obviously, Andy could leave. He could leave for a variety of different reasons by choice. James finds a different director that is going to fit the vision of the script, or maybe Matt Reeves signs on. Nevertheless, the Batman Brave and the Bold is in a very, very precarious situation here, and I think is probably the most vulnerable situation of any of the projects in the DCU as of this moment, because of this what if scenario on who's making the movie. Is it Andy? Do we trust Andy? What's up with the script for it? Is all of that going out the window because Matt Reeves is in talks of maybe possibly, although this is great for the DC for publicity and conversations on a fan side of things, or even just maybe even on a business side of things, depending on how intense it is a concern, or I would imagine it's a concern, because it's a bunch of what ifs and we don't want that. We saw how that show went with Marvel. It didn't do so good, man. You know, like, we don't need that in DC.
No. And to your point, Zeus, that is a great question. As to, I feel as though James Gunn has been very open about his process with DC. And I mean, Andy must have had some kind of pitch, because for me, The Flash just didn't do it. I struggle to see what in The Flash would be considered noteworthy, especially for Batman. We're talking about DC's home run hitter. And this is probably, to your point, Zeus, as a fan, the most anxiety-ridden issue with DC right now is if Batman doesn't do well, if Andy Muschietti does not do well and Batman Brave and the Bold flops, it really puts DC in a tough position. It really, if you don't get the casting right, or the script wasn't great, or the tone is off, it becomes a much bigger problem than if a show flops, right? Because then it's your big guy. You know, Superman, I was pretty trustworthy and good on James Gunn for being the director of Superman and kind of putting that weight on him to kick it off the right way. But we have to follow it strong. And I know James knows this, and I know he watches and he knows this. So just listen, James. I want the best for DC, and I want the best for my favorite character, Batman. And it's nothing against Andy. And if Andy pulls it off, I'll eat crap. If Andy turns around and says, dude, I got this, and he locks in and it's a hit, by all means, stick with it. But man, I'm having a very hard time releasing my favorite character to someone that I don't see the vision. And I think a lot of people don't see the vision. And I think, to your point, Zeus, the reason why the script might be having problems getting done is I think Matt Reeves might be playing a little bit of this in the middle. I do think it's a possibility that the Batman Part 2, what took that so long, was that Matt Reeves was kind of toying with the idea of like, look, dude, the popularity's there. I know the gentleman who works with James Gunn, what's his name?
Peter Safran.
He said that there was not going to be two Batman at the same time. Well, there has to be if you're going to use Andy Muschietti in a different Batman, because the crime saga is going to continue. Whether it's Elseworld or not, that's going to continue. I mean, it's there. It's there, and we discussed earlier how well it could be done. And I would, if they turned around and said Matt Reeves is going to just take control of Batman and Batman Brave and the Bold, I would be pretty close to crying happy tears, because I have complete trust in that man. After the Batman and the Penguin series that he has, and just his understanding of not just Batman, but his Rogues Gallery and Gotham City, just everything that he's touched when it comes to Batman, he understands it.
I mean, there's a lot of good things that could come from this, a lot of bad things. The script for the Batman Part 2 looking really good. James Gunn is ecstatic over it. And there was a lot of questions on the canon, DCU canon for that movie, but we're going to have to find out later on, and we'll try to get some more conversations out about this as more information unfolds. I know we're a little bit late to the party on this. Sorry, life happens. But that has been another Nerds and Square Small Talk podcast episode from BP Fun. I'm the host with the most, Captain Zeus. That there was Lucky with all the hot takes you could think of, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.